Deryc Plazz, offensive tackle. Not quite the prospect, but you never know because, hey, that's why they recruit and scout and sign these guys at 6'5", 290, 73rd rated at his position out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, Deryc Plazz is a guy who I think is going to be one of the many players in this class whose ranking rises through his senior year. Um, he chose Miami over NC State and Fui. I forget the other team. I had to click into his profile. The Penn State. So two teams that are pretty well known for evaluating and developing offensive line talent, right? And he picked Miami, made that push for him in Jacksonville Mandarin High School. And this is a kid, 6'5", 295, an actual tackle. And remember, Miami for years had struggled to get tackle-sized bodies. We were playing guys out of position, a Trevor Darling, for example. He's a guard all day, every day. But we ended up playing him outside. And yeah, this is a guy who, if you look at the ranking right now, I don't believe that that's really representative of him as a player or where his ranking is going to end up. I think that he's maybe a more low floor, high ceiling player than Lightfoot, where Lightfoot is like a mid floor, mid upper floor, like he's, more of a blue chip. So I think the variance is, absent injury is not as great. But yeah, Plazz is a guy. First of all, weird name spelling. If you're listening just to the podcast, Deryc is Deryc for his first name. Plazz, Plazz. But yeah, so he fits the physical profile for an actual tackle, and you love to see that. And this backs up, Miami in the last recruiting cycle got, who was the player? It was hold on, I have to go look because it is evading me. Not Okunlola or Mauagoa, like duh. We know them. We remember them. Tommy Kinsler, 6'6", 330 last year, who's a guy who can play inside or outside, but he has the height and length to actually stick at tackle, even though we had the 2 5-star tackles in front of him. But that was a guy who ended up as a 4-star down the line. You know what I mean? Like he, went through the process and committed to Florida for a cup of coffee and flipped and everything. But Deryc Plazz, he fits everything that you're looking for. And from a physical standpoint, I believe his performance is going to start to back that up even more. This is a guy whose best football is ahead of him. There was maybe a lack of development his first couple of years in high school, just because, sometimes that happens at high schools, especially in Florida, where there's a minor coaching crisis thing going on because, they don't pay nothing. So there's a lot of good coaches who've gone elsewhere. So that means in their absences, some of the players, sometimes they're just not always developed. Like sometimes schools don't develop the position that you play very well. And I think that hit with Plazz early on. But, this is a guy who should at least be a program player at Miami, if not better. But you're looking at, probably 3 or 4 years from now till he plays meaningful rotation snaps at Miami. This is not a guy like Francis Mauagoa, because Mauagoa is probably going to start at right tackle for the Hurricanes this year. And then Okunlola, the other 5-star, is probably going to be in the 2 deep and play rotational snaps, as true freshmen, however many months out of high school, 8 or 9 months, because they were both early enrollees. Fine, cool, got it. But Deryc Plazz is not going to be that. Deryc Plazz is going to be along the lines of, these are players that I brought up in the past, even though they played inside of Miami. But, that Danny Isidoro from Weston Cypress Bay, who didn't really play until his 3rd year, ended up 2nd team all conference. John Feliciano from Davie Western High School down here in South Florida. Another guy who didn't play for, 3-4 years, but he ends up I'm sorry. He was the one. I think both of them were second team or honorable mention all conference. And then Jonathan Feliciano, I believe, is still in the NFL. But, to this day, a decade on from, just kind of being, a middling 3-star kind of recruit. And that can happen along the offensive line. And I think that with Deryc Plazz, if you have that or better, then you're in a really good spot. But you have the ingredients here to make a gourmet meal. You know what I mean? Like, you have a guy of actual 6'5" height, not 6'5" list, like they listed me, like I told you years ago. I'm 6 feet tall. They listed me at 6'4", 6'5" in my high school basketball, program when I first made varsity as a sophomore. And I'm like, do we have another Underwood number 24? Because that's a big stretch. You know what I mean? This is not that. This is a guy who's actually that kind of a size. But to unlock that potential, you're going to have to put in the time to develop his technique and develop his body. But all that being said, this is another good get for the offensive line. And you can take a chance, quote unquote, on a Deryc Plazz type player when you just brought in 2 of the 3 best 5-star offensive tackles the year before. So this goes to the question, I forget his name, but the USC guy asked in here maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. He was like, what's going on with the offensive line recruiting for Miami? Here it is. You're getting the kind of mid to long-term development prospects to fit in behind the superstars at the position that you need. And more than anything else, I think offensive line is a development over time position. You're rarely going to get those, supremely sized and talented guys to step in and play, day one, year one. Wisconsin's made a living for 40 years on developmental dudes, with the exception of like 3. You know what I mean? So getting that time to get, the mango seasons, just the puberty all the way through, just that grown man strength, because there's a difference of a 19-year-old offensive lineman and like a 22-year, you know what I mean? Like, it's just to get that maturity to them. And I think that, if you're going to enact that kind of a process, a player and a prospect like Deryc Plazz really does fit that, and it supports the overall, again, mid and long-term trajectory of the offensive line and that offensive line room.
It's where the term grown man applies right there. There's just something about having that that frame fill out just a little bit more, and that
it
girth
is
a little bit more. Yeah.
I had a cousin who played, I had 2 cousins who played college baseball. One played for a year. He went to West Point and then didn't play. And the other one went to Morehouse. And we were on a family cruise some years ago. And the younger one, he went to Morehouse and then transferred to Western Michigan. But as leading his team to state championship game or state semifinals, his senior year in high school, I forget whichever one it was, but my younger cousin decided, like, okay, like, I'm going to buck up and I'm going to run up against Cam. And I was like, bro, like, I even at the time, I'm like, I don't be in the gym and I'm not even the biggest, but I got some mature grown man strength to me, and you don't want the problems. And then, he, it was funny because it was in the cabin that we were sharing on this cruise. We went on years ago. And, he came at me and he attacked me from behind. And then, the wrestling match ensued, and he's lighter skinned than I am. And at the end, I kind of had my elbow across his face, like his face was turned to the side. I was like, yo, are you done? He's like, all right, cool. So we go to dinner on the boat that night, and hey, it's whatever. And we went with his parents. And my aunt was just like, oh my God, Andrew, what happened? Because he had this bright red thing across his face. And I was like, hey, look, he came at me. I had to defend myself. And it wasn't even, again, like I was in the gym repping out, 415 for or whatever. Nah, I just had a couple of years of just growth and development. I was in my, early mid-20s, and he was still in high school. He didn't have that oomph yet. And even though, like, yeah, he could probably throw up more than me in the weight room, like, still got dealt with. And, those things happen, but especially on the offensive line, that just overall maturity matters.
Yeah, this is the difference between an 18-year-old and a 21 or 22-year-old. What comes to mind is I think we've all witnessed, sometimes in person, and sometimes it's rather contentious, or there's a little danger there. Sometimes it's just playful and like, I think I can pick on my old man because I'm feeling good about myself. I'm a 16-year-old and I've arrived, and
Right.
being,
Do it if you
there's a
want
bit of
to.
a beat down coming.
Right.
And
It's
in this
funny.
thing,
There's another podcast by someone at ESPN, and they do a voicemail segment. And every now and then it's like, yeah, just the time that you tried to buck up against your dad. It's old. Everybody has that story. That one time, like, man, I could take it. All right. Okay. And then, pretty much every story ends up with, yeah. And then he flipped me, flexed me, slammed me, choked me up against the wall, was talking greasy to my mom. And he comes in and, just does just lifts me up by my neck and everything. Like it's a rite of passage. It's a tale as old as time. So, but again, on the offensive line, when you're in close proximity, hand-to-hand combat, every single snap, that matters.